If I don't win this thing after all this talk, I'm in trouble. Will you please go and vote?
That right there, in my opinion, is evidence that Donald Trump is perhaps for the first time ever finally coming to grips with the reality that he might not win this election. And I've got to say, seeing him squirm is oh so delicious, because how terrified have we all been about the prospect of him becoming president again over the course of the last couple of years? How worried have we been? How many times has he kept us on pins and needles because of his erratic behavior? So it's nice to see him finally get a taste of his own medicine. But I've got to say, he's worried for very, very good reason, because I think that he's feeling what we're all feeling currently, and that is the palpable vibe shift, especially after the Des Moines Register published that new Seltzer poll, which we will get to. But before that was even published, we had this report from Axios where they talk about how Donald Trump is basically crippled with anxiety because of this election. Quote, Trump's anxiety is evident in his late night and early morning calls to aides in which he peppers them with questions on how things are going and whether they think he'll win. So that right there is a sign that he is absolutely worried, and just the prospect of him shitting himself, worried about this election, thinking that if he doesn't win, he's going to go to jail. It makes me so happy. It puts a smile on my face. And I have a dead heart, but if it makes me smile, you know it's beautiful. Now, we know that these reports are correct because he is behaving in a way that somebody who is nervous would behave. I mean, just think about when we have anxiety ourselves. Me personally, I get very fidgety. I say things that are stupid. It's really difficult to collect my thoughts. And Donald Trump's behavior is indicative of somebody who is not thinking straight. Not that he ever thinks straight because he's Donald Trump, but more so than usual. For example, at a rally, he decided to, I don't even know how to describe this. Let me just show it to you. Folks, that's where we're at. The potential president of the United States is pretending to jerk off and suck a dick on stage to a crowd of people. And that guy's face, just in the crowd, as he was watching this happen, you know that he was starting to question his decisions in life. Probably not, but I mean, maybe, I'd like to think. At least he was a little bit uncomfortable, which you should be uncomfortable, because of all the shit that Donald Trump says, the fascism, the mass deportations, the threats of violence against the enemies within, I think that him pretending to suck a dick is the least offensive thing that he could do at a rally. Nonetheless, it's still pretty out of character for Donald Trump, which at least to me is an indication that he's shitting himself. Now, that Politico report was published, I believe, before the Des Moines Register published their Seltzer poll. And that poll has sent shockwaves through Washington, D.C. and the entire country, because what that shows is massive. And listen, you all know I don't like to do predictions. I like to talk about probabilities. If X condition is met, then there is a probability of 50% that this might happen. That's the way that I like to deal. But this poll, let me just say, as anxious as I am about this election, it made me feel a little bit of hopium. The Des Moines Register reports Harris leads Trump 47-44 in the red state of Iowa. Quote, the poll shows that women, particularly those who are older or who are politically independent, are driving the late shift towards Harris. Age and gender are the two most dynamic factors that are explaining these numbers, Seltzer said. So let's pause and back up for a moment. Republicans were already getting a little bit doomer because they're seeing the same numbers that we're seeing. They're seeing the massive amount of women early voting compared to men. There is a gender gap, and they are shitting themselves because of that. But now this poll shows that Harris is leading in Iowa. Now, does this mean that she's going to win Iowa? I really don't know. But this poll is so significant because Seltzer is basically the best that you can get when it comes to polls. So what they're finding here is that women are driving this massive surge towards Kamala Harris. And if this holds in Iowa, even if it's not enough to get her over the finish line there, the implications are this could help her in other states. And if this holds, then we'll just say we'll probably find out the results on Tuesday night. That's the kind of environment we may be heading into on election day. But let me just give you the record of Seltzer and why so many people trust her. Matthew Klein reports on Twitter, in 2022, they found that Republicans were plus 12. The actual result was identical. Republicans were plus 12. In 2020, for the presidential race, they found that Republicans were plus 7. The actual result was plus 8. These are findings from Iowa, by the way. Now, in 2020, in the Senate, they found that the Republican was plus 4 and the Republican was plus 7. So a little off there. 2018 governor race, plus 2, plus 3 for the Republican. 2016 president, plus 7, plus 9 in actuality. 2014 Senate, plus 7, plus 8 in actuality. 2012 president, D plus 5, D plus 6 in actuality. In other words, as far as polls go, I don't think you get better than this. There's a reason why we're not seeing that many Republicans go out of their way to deny the results of this poll, because it's a seltzer poll. So they're seeing this, and rather than denying it, they probably are just dealing with that sinking feeling that they have. But somebody who is denying this is Donald Trump. So he responded to this poll at a rally, and he predictably chose to go full authoritarian and called this a form of voter suppression. Let's watch.
And we even have the polls up, but I think it's much more than the polls. No, the polls, I'm telling you, you can make those suckers sing. You get the right pollster, you can do, and you really do inflict damage. You know, when you do like this person from Iowa. Today, the election essentially is really, we're talking Turkey, comes out with a poll different from every other poll because it wasn't even in question. It's really the opposite way. I'm way up. If you look at 3-4 months ago, Dan, I was losing states that now are walks, you know, they're now walks. And I think you're going to have that here. It's called suppression. They suppress, and it actually should be illegal because it's, in many ways, it's worse than the written word, which these guys do quite well, actually.
Yeah, that right there is as close as a confirmation you're going to get from Donald Trump that he knows that this poll is actually very accurate. Now, keep in mind that Axios article was published before we got the results from the Seltzer poll. And now there are reports about this memo that's going on in the Trump campaign that they are in panic mode, and they should be. It's not a foregone conclusion that this is going to be indicative of the final result, but is it a good sign? Yeah, it's a really good sign. And the vibes have changed once again, and I see a lot of people who aren't feeling as doom and gloom as I would have thought, even though the polls are still showing that it's close. But there was always this possibility that the polls were undercounting Kamala Harris or underestimating Kamala Harris. And we're getting more and more signs that that does indeed appear to be the case, although we won't know for sure until we see the results, but the signs are there. And I liked seeing that. So I don't know what's going to happen, but that poll, game changer, completely changed the vibes. My mood is completely different now. Seeing that makes me feel a little bit more confident, albeit cautiously so. So hopefully you enjoy the good news, and hopefully you like to see Donald Trump squirm and shit his pants, because again, this is such an evil person. And not to mention, all of this is happening as we get like 30 different October surprises in November. The Epstein tapes were just released. We get audio from Michael Wolff where Jeffrey Epstein talks about how he's been a friend with Donald Trump for years, his closest friend, and he can describe the Trump White House, meaning Trump was lying about his association with Epstein and always has been. I've got to say, aside from the fear that we're seeing from Republicans, I'm hearing something. Do you hear that? That's the deafening silence from conservatives who purport to care about all of these pedophiles, right? They accuse Democrats, the QAnon crowd, of being pedophiles and they're trafficking children. And then we get evidence that has Trump dead to rights, aside from the photographic evidence and everything else we know, and the confessions that, yeah, he's Epstein's longtime associate, and they're much more closer than he let on, and these people aren't saying shit. Okay, it's not like we're surprised by their hypocrisy and double standards, but nonetheless, it's out there, and it's a lot more difficult for them to deny it. So, yeah. So in conclusion, with how crazy things have been, I genuinely would not be surprised if even more things changed before Tuesday. That's how wild this election has been. But I just wanted to drop you some good news because, look, when you get good news in politics, you celebrate it because we don't get that often, especially when we have Donald Trump running for president for the third fucking time. But I hope to God Kamala wins. And if she wins, I hope to God that this is the end of the Trump era once and for all. Just end it already. We're sick of it. I don't want to hear from this man. I don't want to see his fucking face. I hope this is the end of the Trump era.
Do yourself a favor and click the join button on YouTube to become a member. Because Mike's doing a great job getting to watch his videos before everyone else is tremendous. Many people are saying this. Join today, folks. You won't regret it.